All right, so you sent over some pretty intense stuff this time.
It's definitely a hot topic.
Yeah, prayer in public spaces. We're looking at Quebec specifically, right?
Right.
Premier François Legault is thinking about like a full-on ban.
Yeah, he seems pretty serious about it.
And we've got a CTV News article and a Reddit thread from good old Sir Canada to try to make sense of all this.
Sounds like we're in for a wild ride with this one.
Yeah, it looks like people have a lot of strong opinions on this one already.
Oh, for sure. Those Reddit comments are always a roller coaster.
But let's start with that CTV News article first.
Okay.
It lays out Legault's proposal.
Right.
He's particularly worried about what he calls Islamists disrespecting, like, Quebec values.
Yeah, that's interesting how he uses that term, right?
Yeah, and connects it directly with, like, banning prayer in public places.
Like parks and streets.
Yeah. He even mentions using the Notwithstanding clause.
Wow.
Which basically lets the government overrule certain charter rights.
That's a pretty big deal, right?
Yeah. Definitely not messing around.
No kidding.
The article mentions that clause was used for Quebec's Bill 21.
Right, the one that bans religious symbols for certain public sector workers.
So there's a history here with this kind of thing.
Definitely a pattern of pushing for secularism.
Yeah, and it makes this whole thing even more complicated.
Absolutely. This context is so important.
There's this specific example about Muslim Eid celebrations last June.
Oh, right, in that Montreal park.
Yeah, some people called for a prayer ban after that.
Because of that event.
Yeah, pretty interesting, right?
It is. It shows how one specific event can spark this bigger debate.
Like a domino effect.
Yeah, exactly.
Now let's look at that Reddit thread you mentioned.
Right.
The reactions there are all over the place.
That's the beauty of Reddit, though, right?
True. So many different perspectives.
Some people are praising Legault for taking a stand.
Like saying public spaces should be neutral, and then you've got others saying he's targeting a specific religion.
Like hiding behind this broader policy.
Yeah, and some are even straight up calling him Islamophobic.
It's a serious accusation.
For sure shows how sensitive this whole thing is.
There's so much emotion around this debate.
It's wild.
It is.
Of course, Reddit also has those jokes mixed in.
Gotta love those.
Someone said the Toronto Maple Leafs need this law so they can finally win the Stanley Cup.
Classic Reddit.
Yeah.
But even those funny comments can show us something deeper.
Like maybe they're worried about religion messing with things in the real world.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So we've got Legault's proposal, strong reactions from people.
Yep.
And this whole history of secularism in Quebec.
What a mix.
Where do we even go from here?
Well, the CTV article digs into some recent things that happen in Quebec schools.
Oh, okay.
Like teachers letting kids pray in class and girls being kept from playing sports.
So it's not just about praying in public.
Nope. Schools are a big part of this, too.
It makes you wonder, though, is this really about all religions?
Or just Islam.
Right. You pointed out some Reddit comments about that.
It's a key question, isn't it?
For sure.
Legault did say people on their knees in general.
Yeah.
But he also keeps talking about Islamists.
Right. And those incidents in the article are about Muslim practices.
So it does raise questions.
And this new bill to make schools more secular will probably make some people think that way, too.
Probably.
So this is getting complicated.
It is, but that's what makes this deep dive so interesting.
True. It's not just a simple news story.
Nope. We're talking about big questions.
Yeah, like individual rights and societal values.
And the role of religion in public life.
This is where it gets really juicy.
Definitely.
We've got these big ideas like freedom of expression, butting heads with concerns about public order.
Right. And that Reddit thread gives us some real-life examples of how that plays out.
Yeah, totally. Some people say even silent prayer can make others uncomfortable.
Interesting.
And others say any limits on prayer are a slippery slope.
Like it could lead to less freedom for everyone.
Exactly. It's like that saying, your right to swing your fist ends where my nose begins.
Oh, yeah, I've heard that one.
Like, freedom of expression is important.
Of course.
But we have to think about other people's rights and feelings, too.
That's the tough part, right?
Totally. Finding that balance is hard, especially in a diverse place like Canada.
Absolutely.
So we need to really understand the legal stuff here. Like, what exactly can the government do with the Notwithstanding clause? And what happens if they use it?
Good questions.
And how does this impact the Charter of Rights and Freedoms?
Yeah, we'll need to look into all that more closely.
We've covered a lot already.
Yeah.
But it feels like we're just getting started.
Yeah, there's so much more to unpack.
This whole prayer and public spaces thing seems like the tip of the iceberg.
When it comes to religious freedom in Canada.
Exactly.
This is going to be a deep dive.
No doubt about it.
So listener, what are your thoughts so far?
Yeah. what really stands out to you about Legault's idea and what people are saying?
Let's all take a minute to think about this.
Sounds good. And we'll pick up this conversation after a little break.
I'm looking forward to it. It's crazy how this is about more than just prayer.
What do you mean?
Like, it brings up this whole question of what's okay to do in public.
Oh, like those unspoken rules we all have?
Exactly what's appropriate, what's not.
But those rules are different for everyone, right?
Of course, based on your background experiences, all that.
What one person thinks is totally fine.
Someone else might find it super annoying.
Or even offensive.
Right, and that's what we see in those Reddit comments.
Yeah, some people say prayer is like meditating.
Quiet, personal.
No big deal to do it in public.
But others say even silent prayer makes them uncomfortable.
If they don't believe the same thing.
It's tough, right?
Yeah. How do we deal with all these different opinions and still live together peacefully?
Good question. I think it starts with recognizing that even people who disagree
can agree on some things.
Exactly like most people would probably say, respect is important.
Right, and tolerance.
And finding ways to get along, even when we don't see eye to eye.
Maybe focusing on that common ground can help.
It's worth a shot.
Yeah, it reminds me of that one comment you pointed out.
Which one?
From that atheist person.
Oh, right.
They said they don't believe in prayer,
Uh-huh.
but they believe in freedom of expression.
Including the right to practice religion.
Even if it's not their own religion.
That's powerful, right?
Yeah, it shows that real tolerance means standing up for things you might not personally agree with.
It's about going beyond those simple labels.
Like religious versus secular.
Because everyone's different.
Yeah, and we need to try to understand and respect those differences.
Absolutely.
So let's talk about what could happen if Legault actually bans prayer.
Okay.
What would that mean for Quebec?
And for religious freedom in Canada as a whole. Using the notwithstanding clause like that would be huge.
Yeah, no one's really done that before for something like this.
It would basically say the government can limit religious expression.
Even if it's protected by the charter.
It makes you wonder if other provinces might try to do the same thing.
Or even the federal government.
And people are already pretty divided on this.
Based on that Reddit thread.
Right, this could really make things worse.
Drive people further apart.
It's definitely a risk.
And even if the ban is just about certain types of prayer,
it could make people afraid to express their faith openly.
Like even if it's totally legal, they might not want to do it.
Because they're worried about what others will think.
Or getting in trouble.
Right, it could create this culture of self-censorship.
Which is the opposite of what a free and open society should be.
Exactly, one restriction can lead to another and another.
Like a domino effect.
Yeah, suddenly we're limiting freedoms we used to take for granted.
That's scary.
It is. This is about so much more than just prayer.
It's about protecting those basic freedoms.
And making sure Canada stays a place where people can be themselves.
Without the government getting in the way.
Exactly.
The article mentions Legault has also criticized immigration.
Oh, right. Especially what he calls temporary immigration.
He says it threatens the French language in Montreal.
Interesting.
Do you think there's a connection between that and this prayer ban idea?
It seems like he wants to control certain things.
Like language, religion, culture.
Yeah, it's about shaping public life in a specific way.
And this connects to that whole debate about Quebec's identity.
And how it fits into Canada.
Legault's government is all about Quebec nationalism.
Emphasizing their unique culture and values.
And this secularism push with Bill 21 and now this prayer ban?
That seems like a big part of that.
The article even says Legault's open to the idea of a Quebec constitution.
Wow.
Which could solidify these values even more.
So is this about protecting Quebec's culture?
Or is it about forcing a specific worldview on everyone?
Tough question. There are valid points on both sides.
It's not just a simple religious versus secular thing.
Or freedom versus restriction.
It's about finding that balance.
Between individual rights and collective identity.
And figuring out how religion fits into a society with so many different beliefs.
We need nuance, empathy, and real conversation to figure this out.
Even when those conversations are hard.
Definitely.
We've talked about the bad things that could happen.
With this prayer ban.
But are there other ways to address this?
Like, could we find solutions that don't involve banning things outright?
What if instead of a ban, there were designated prayer areas?
In public spaces?
Or rules for religious gatherings so they don't cause problems?
Or infringe on other people's rights?
Those are good ideas.
They show that we can be creative.
And respectful of both individual freedom and community needs.
Maybe through talking and compromise?
We can find a middle ground.
Where religious expression is allowed.
But concerns about disruption and discomfort are also addressed.
It won't be easy.
But it's worth trying.
Absolutely.
It's about finding that balance where everyone feels respected and heard.
Even if they don't always agree.
This deep dive has really opened my eyes.
Mine too.
This debate is far from over.
It's probably just getting started.
It'll keep people talking and arguing for years to come.
For sure. And it goes beyond Quebec. We see these same debates all over the world.
About religion in public life.
Like a global identity crisis.
Wow.
Making us question what it means to be a nation, a community, an individual.
In this world where everyone's so connected.
Exactly.
And technology has amplified all of this.
Oh, yeah.
Social media like Reddit.
It can make people more divided.
But it also lets us see so many different viewpoints.
Instant, unfiltered reactions.
It's a double-edged sword for sure.
Definitely. But technology is just a tool.
It's up to us to use it wisely.
To have better conversations.
And build a more inclusive society where everyone feels like they belong.
I like that.
So for our listener who sent us these sources, why should they care about this prayer debate?
Especially if they don't live in Quebec.
Or aren't religious themselves.
Because this is about more than just religion.
It's about those basic freedoms.
The kind of country we want to live in.
The values we think are important.
Even if this prayer ban doesn't affect you directly,
it could set a precedent for limiting other things you do care about.
It's about standing up for everyone's right to express themselves.
Freely and peacefully, no matter what they believe.
And it's about understanding that these issues are complicated.
There's no easy answer.
We need to listen to each other.
And be open to different perspectives.
Even when it's hard.
This deep dive has been amazing.
It really has.
We started with just a news article and a Reddit thread.
And look where we ended up.
We talked about Legault's plan, the history, all the social stuff.
Even the global implications.
Well, it's mind-blowing.
It is. Thanks for sharing these sources.
And for joining us on this journey.
It's been a pleasure.
We hope this deep dive gave you some new insights, listener.
And maybe even inspired you to learn more about all this.
It's a conversation worth having.
Definitely.
Feels like we've just scratched the surface here.
It's a huge topic.
Any final thoughts you want to leave our listener with?
This whole thing makes you think, right?
About what?
Like, what if prayer really was banned in public? What would that mean for other types of expression?
Like what?
Stuff that people might find offensive or disruptive.
Oh, I see.
Could be religious or not religious. Doesn't matter.
So where do we draw that line?
Yeah. How do we decide what's okay and what's not?
And what does that say about the kind of society we're building?
Are we all about freedom and diversity, or do we want everyone to be the same?
Big questions, man.
They are. It's something we all need to think about.
Yeah, for sure. That really puts things in perspective.
It's not just about prayer.
It's about those fundamental choices we make as a society.
Exactly. What do we value? How do we want to live together?
And each of us has a part to play in figuring that out.
By talking and listening.
Being open to different ideas.
And thinking about the consequences of our actions.
Yeah, we can all help build a better world.
One that's fair and inclusive for everyone.
This has been an incredible deep dive.
It really has.
I can't believe we got all this from just a news article and a Reddit thread.
It's amazing what a couple of sources can spark.
We covered Legault's proposal, the history, the social dynamics.
Even the global context.
Mind-blowing stuff.
Thanks for sharing these sources with us.
And for being here to help us unpack it all.
My pleasure.
Listener, we hope this deep dive gave you some food for thought.
And maybe inspired you to keep exploring these questions on your own.
Thanks for tuning in.
Until next time.